shortly after I met Kyle, in the late 70s, the Knoxville World's Fair came to Knoxville. And it was a fantastic experience. I loved it. Kyle was very instrumental in getting the fair here. His daughter Muffet was a hospitality chairman. Sort of a family activity. And when the fair was over, the prevailing problem in Knoxville was, what do we do with that property? There was a large, expansive property that the fair buildings were on. And Kyle was determined to develop it successfully for the community. Well, there were several groups that came in and gave offers of what they were going to do, and no one really had the idea, a successful idea, that clicked with everyone. So Kyle decided to form a task force. And he put 25 men on a committee, and he called it KTI, Knoxville Tomorrow, Inc. And I'll never, ever forget the first meeting of KTI. It was held up in the Sun Sphere. And there were 25 men sitting there, a lot of them very prominent bank presidents, business leaders in the community. And they were about to see the full range of this brilliant man's memory. His memory was off the charts. He had a map up on the wall that showed 35 parcels of land. And he had a little identifying rod that he would go from plat to plat. And as he came to one of the 35 parcels, he would tell us the complete financial history of this parcel. Who the city obtained it from, what did they have to do to obtain it, what were the indebtedness levels against it. And many times, a simple parcel had between 8 and 10 actions that had taken place on it. He remembered every one of them. He had no notes. He had no papers. He simply went through all 35 and traced the history and the financial status of each one. And I remember my reaction was the same as everyone in the room. Our jaws collectively dropped while we listened to this. For we were watching, really, we were listening to this masterful demonstration of a memory, of his memory facilities. And he was accurate. He was accurate about each one of them because he ultimately handed around documents to us that substantiated. The point was that he wanted us to know everything that the city administration had gone through to obtain these 35 parcels. The buildings that they had to get torn down, the streets that they had to get vacated, even to the extent of getting the railroad to stop running through during the time of the fair. It was unbelievable, and I knew, quite frankly, that I was watching a genius at work. He was brilliant, a brilliant man. Did he always make the right decisions for the community? Only history is going to define that. I think if you talked to the average businessman in this community, after all these years, they would tell you that he had no parallel as a community leader, that his accurate predictions of what was going to happen all happened. He knew what was going to happen. or at least he felt he knew what was going to happen. He couldn't convince the city council to act. He convinced all of us, but he had some problems getting the city council to take the proper steps. I remember that Walter Cronkite came in with a company that had developed the Baltimore Harbor, and they gave us a magnificent proposal, and all they needed was some form of an endorsement from the city council that they were in favor of it. And it required a relatively small amount of money, one that subsequently would just get absorbed easily. But Kyle's style just simply couldn't convince them. He was combative, and what was good about him what was bad about him. He was a very hi there.
Hey, how you doing?
He was very almost argumentative to a point that it was counterproductive. But he was right. He was accurate, and here we are, 33 years later. We still have a undeveloped fair site, an unperforming fair site, because it costs the city and the taxpayers money to keep it up, rather than have an income base, which is what Kyle's point was. Kyle wanted to make that site an income-producing tax revenue, and he would have been right, and the city would have been able to reap millions of dollars if they had responded accurately to it. We couldn't. I know KTI endorsed it completely, but it still required the city council to approve a relatively small fee to the developers in Baltimore. It was a Washington-based company, but they had already successfully developed the Baltimore Harbor, and they had gotten their own money. They had gotten private investors. It wasn't that they wanted this community to be a private investors. They told us they would get them, and they could get them. So in hindsight, unfortunately, the community lost. In that whole process, I walked away with this unbelievable awe of what kind of intellect that this man has. Aside from being my friend, he was absolutely brilliant. He had a temper. He acknowledged that he had a temper. He'll tell many people that he felt that he lost the last election because he lost his temper on television. He wouldn't make adjustments to accommodate degrees of patronage. He knew what was best for the community, and he wanted the community to reap the benefits of it, and they would have had they listened back in 1983. Unfortunately, they didn't.